My daughter waited at my kitchen table, furious that I declined her credit card. She demanded I fix it immediately. I sat down, pulled out a binder, and said, I already called the police. The sun in Scottsdale, Arizona, does not just shine, it irradiates. It beats down on the stucco roofs and the gravel lawns with a relentless, white-hot intensity that bleaches the color out of everything it touches. It was 10 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday in July, and the thermometer on my back patio already read 102 degrees. Inside my house, the air conditioner hummed a steady, expensive rhythm, fighting a war against the desert heat. I sat at my kitchen table. My name is Helen Foster. I am 72 years old. I spent 40 years working as a payroll administrator for the school district. I know numbers. I know how to balance a ledger down to the penny. I know that if the columns do not add up, someone is making a mistake, or someone is stealing. I adjusted my reading glasses and picked up the heavy magnifying glass I keep in the junk drawer. I hovered it over the paper bank statement lying on the granite placemat. The font was small, but the number was enormous. There it was. Line item 42. Sedona Spirit and Spa. $12,400. Pending. I stared at the number. The magnifying glass shook slightly in my hand. $12,000. For a weekend. I looked out the window at the cactus garden I tended every morning. I thought about my grandson, Noah. He was 8 years old. He needed braces. He needed new soccer cleats. He needed a college fund. But his parents, my daughter Rachel and her husband Greg, did not think about braces. They thought about wellness. They thought about spiritual alignment. They thought about luxury retreats in the red rocks of Sedona, where they could post pictures on social media and pretend they were successful. I put the magnifying glass down. I took a sip of my iced tea. The condensation dripped onto the table, leaving a wet ring. I closed my eyes and let my mind drift back 2 years. It had started with a layoff. Greg had lost his job as a marketing consultant. He told us it was a corporate restructuring, but I suspected he had simply stopped showing up. Rachel had come to me in tears. They could not afford groceries. They could not afford diapers for Noah. I am a mother. What was I supposed to do? I could not let them starve. I could not let my grandson go without milk. So, I did something I had promised myself I would never do. I added Rachel as an authorized user on my primary credit card. It was a card with a high limit, one I kept for emergencies and travel. Just for groceries, Mom, Rachel had promised, hugging me. And maybe gas. Just until Greg gets his startup off the ground. We will pay you back every cent, I believed her. Or perhaps, I just wanted to believe her. For the first month, the charges were modest. Safeway, Shell, a pharmacy charge for Noah's asthma inhaler. Then, the slide began. It started with a charge at Sephora. $100. I asked Rachel about it. Oh, Mom, I have to look presentable for job interviews, she had said. I let it slide. Then it was a dinner at a steakhouse. $200. We were networking with an investor for Greg's app, Rachel explained. Then it was the clothes, the electronics, the business trips to Las Vegas that resulted in zero business but plenty of charges at pool bars. I had tried to stop it. I had sat them down, gently, over coffee. I showed them the statements. I told them I was on a fixed income. I told them my retirement savings were not infinite. Greg had smiled that oily, condescending smile of his. Helen, you have to spend money to make money, he had said, leaning back in my chair like he owned it. We are building a brand. Once the app launches, I will write you a check that will pay off your house. My house is already paid off. Greg, I had reminded him. I paid it off 20 years ago with a payroll salary. Exactly, he said, missing the point entirely. You have old money thinking. We have new money thinking. New money thinking. Apparently, that meant spending money you did not have. I looked down at the statement again. $12,400. I picked up my phone. I saw a text from Rachel sent an hour ago. Hey, Mom! Taking a mental health break this week. Dropped Noah off at the sitter. Do not wait up. Love you. They had dropped my grandson off with a stranger so they could go spend my life savings on massages and energy healing. I felt a coldness settle in my chest. It was not anger. Anger burns hot. This was ice. This was the cold realization that I had been played. I was not a lifeline to them. I was a host. And they were parasites. I stood up. I walked to the sink and poured my tea down the drain. Enough, I whispered to the empty kitchen. I walked to the hallway closet. I grabbed my purse. I grabbed my car keys. I walked out into the garage. The heat hit me like a physical blow as the door rolled up, but I did not flinch. I got into my sedan. It was 10 years old. It ran perfectly. I backed out of the driveway. I did not drive to the police station. Not yet. I drove to the bank. The branch was cool and quiet. It smelled of carpet cleaner and money. I walked up to the desk of the branch manager, Mr. Henderson. He had known me for 30 years. He knew my husband before he passed. Mrs. Foster, Mr. Henderson said, standing up and buttoning his jacket. It is good to see you. How can I help you today? I sat down in the leather chair opposite his desk. I placed the bank statement on the polished wood. I need to close my account, Mr. Henderson, I said. He blinked. Close it? You mean, transfer it? No, I said. I mean close it. The credit card account. I want it shut down. Immediately. He frowned, looking concerned. Is everything all right, Helen? You have had that card since 1995. You have excellent history. I have a fraudulent user, I said. Mr. Henderson's eyes widened. Did someone steal your card? In a manner of speaking, I said. My daughter. She is an authorized user. But she has exceeded her authorization. I pointed to the pending charge for the spa. This charge, I said. $12,000. I did not authorize this. I want to dispute it. Of course, Mr. Henderson said, typing rapidly on his keyboard. We can flag it as fraud. We can start an investigation. But, closing the account entirely? That is a drastic step. It might affect your credit score. I do not care about my credit score, I said. I am 72 years old. I am not buying any more houses. I care about stopping the bleeding. I understand, he said. I want you to remove Rachel from the account, I said. I want you to close this card number so it can never be used again. And I want you to issue me a new card, with a new number, that only I have access to. We can do that, Mr. Henderson said. It will take a few minutes. Take your time, I said. I watched him work. I watched him click the mouse. I watched him print out forms. Here, he said, sliding a paper across the desk. Sign here to confirm the closure. And here to confirm the fraud dispute. I signed. My hand was steady. And the card? I asked. Do you have it? I have my copy, I said. I pulled it out of my wallet. I will need to destroy it, he said. He picked up a pair of heavy scissors from his drawer. He held the blue plastic card over the trash can. Are you sure, Helen? He asked softly. Cut it, I said. Snip. The plastic fell into the bin in 2 pieces. It was a small sound, but to me, it sounded like a guillotine. It is done, Mr. Henderson said. The account is closed. The new card will be mailed to you. In the meantime, any attempt to use the old number by anyone will be declined. Declined, I repeated. The word tasted sweet. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. I stood up. I shook his hand. I walked out of the bank. The sun was higher now. The heat was intensifying. But I felt light. I felt unburdened. I drove home. I took the long way, driving past the elementary school where Noah was in class. I thought about picking him up, but I knew I had to deal with his parents first. I turned onto my street. My heart gave a little jump. There was a car in my driveway. It was a silver BMW X5. It was leased. I knew it was leased because I paid the monthly payment. I paid it because Rachel told me they needed a safe car for Noah. They were here. They were supposed to be in Sedona. They were supposed to be sipping cucumber water and getting hot stone massages. I pulled into the driveway behind the BMW. I turned off the engine. I looked at the house. The front door was unlocked. I could tell because the latch was not fully engaged. Rachel still had a key. I had not changed the locks yet. That was on my list for tomorrow. I took a deep breath. I grabbed my heavy tote bag from the passenger seat. Inside was the binder I had been compiling for 6 months. I walked to the front door. I pushed it open. The air conditioning hit me, but it did not cool the heat of the anger radiating from the kitchen. Where have you been? Rachel's voice was a shriek. She was standing by the kitchen island, her face red and blotchy. She was wearing a white linen outfit she had bought for the resort. It looked wrinkled. Greg was sitting at the table. He was wearing a polo shirt and sunglasses on his head. He looked furious. He was slamming his hand on the table. We have been waiting for an hour, Greg yelled. Do you have any idea what you have done? I walked into the kitchen. I placed my tote bag on the counter. I did not look at them. I walked to the refrigerator and took out a pitcher of water. Hello, Rachel. Hello, Greg, I said. My voice was calm. I was running errands. Errands? Rachel screamed. Errands? You cut us off. We tried to check in. We were standing at the front desk of the resort. The concierge ran the card. And it was declined. Declined, Mom. Do you know how embarrassing that is? Greg shouted. There were people in the lobby. Potential investors. They saw us get rejected like broke college students. It was humiliating, Rachel sobbed. I had to call the babysitter and tell her we were coming back early. She probably thinks we are poor. I poured myself a glass of water. I took a sip. You are poor, I said. The room went silent. Greg stood up. He loomed over the table. Excuse me? He said. You have no jobs, I said. You have no assets. You have no savings. You are poor. The only reason you felt rich was because you were spending my money. That is our money, Greg yelled. We are a family. Families share resources. You promised to help us. I promised to help you buy groceries, I said. I did not promise to fund a $12,000 spiritual awakening. It was an investment. Greg insisted, his face turning purple. I was going to meet a venture capitalist there. It was a networking opportunity. You just ruined my career, Helen. You sabotaged me. Your career is a fantasy, Greg, I said. You have not made a dime in 3 years. Mom, fix it, Rachel demanded. She wiped her eyes, smearing her mascara. Call the bank right now. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them to authorize the charge. We can still drive back up. We can salvage the weekend. No, I said. What do you mean, no? Rachel stomped her foot. You have to. You cannot leave us like this. I closed the account, I said. Rachel gasped. You closed it? Cut into pieces, I said. Gone. You spiteful old witch, Greg shouted. You did that on purpose. You wanted to embarrass us. I wanted to stop the theft, I said. It is not theft, Greg roared. Rachel is an authorized user. She has permission. She had permission for emergencies, I said. A massage is not an emergency. You are ruining our lives, Rachel cried. How are we supposed to pay for gas? How are we supposed to buy food? Get a job, I suggested. Greg laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. A job? In this economy? I am an entrepreneur, Helen. I cannot work at a Starbucks. It would destroy my brand. Your brand is failure, I said. Greg lunged toward me. He stopped himself, but the threat was there. He pointed a finger in my face. You listen to me, he hissed. You are going to fix this. You are going to call the bank and reopen that account. And you are going to transfer $10,000 into our checking account today for the inconvenience. Or else. Or else what? I asked. Or else you will never see Noah again, Rachel said. Her voice was cold. We will move. We will take him away. You will die alone in this house. I looked at my daughter. I looked at the little girl I had raised. I wondered where she had gone. I wondered when she had become this hollow shell of a person, filled only with greed and Greg's lies. I sighed. Sit down, I said. What? Sit down, I repeated. Both of you. There was something in my voice that made them pause. It was not the voice of their mother. It was the voice of the payroll administrator. The voice of the woman who audited the books. They sat. They looked at me with defiance, crossing their arms. We are not leaving until you pay us, Greg said. I reached into my tote bag. I pulled out the binder. It was 3 inches thick. It was heavy. I dropped it onto the table. It landed with a loud thud that made the salt shakers jump. What is that? Rachel asked. I opened the binder. It was filled with spreadsheets, color-coded, highlighted, organized by date, vendor, and category. This, I said, is a forensic accounting of every single dollar you have spent on my card in the last 24 months. I flipped to the first page. January 3rd, 2022. I read. Apple Store, $2,000. New iPhone. I needed it for work, Greg said. February 14th, I continued. Valentine's dinner, $500. Mastro's Steakhouse. It was a special occasion, Rachel argued. March 10th, I read. Nordstrom, $3,000. Handbags. Investments, Rachel said. They hold value. I kept reading. I flipped page after page. I listed the hotels, the flights, the liquor store runs, the cash advances at casinos. I read for 5 minutes. They tried to interrupt, but I kept going. My voice was a drone, a machine of facts. Finally, I flipped to the last page. I pointed to the bottom line. It was circled in red ink. Grand total, I said. I looked at them. $140,652.12. The room went silent. The number hung in the air. So what? Greg sneered, trying to regain his footing. You have money, Helen. You can afford it. Consider it a gift. You love us, right? A gift, I repeated. Yes, Rachel said. You gave it to us. You cannot ask for it back. That is not how gifts work. I closed the binder. You are right, Rachel, I said. Gifts are not taxable up to a certain amount. But this. I tapped the binder. This is not a gift. What do you mean? Greg asked, his eyes narrowing. I never filed a gift tax return, I said. And I never signed a letter stating these were gifts. In the eyes of the law, money that is taken without a contract and without gift documentation is considered one of two things, a loan or income. I smiled. It was a small, tight smile. I decided to be generous, I said. I decided not to call it a loan, because I know you cannot pay it back. So it is a gift, Greg said, relieved. See? Problem solved. No, I said. I categorized it as income. Income? Rachel frowned. We didn't work for you. Exactly, I said. It is unearned income, or, as the IRS calls it, miscellaneous income. I reached into the front pocket of the binder. I pulled out a certified mail receipt. I sent a copy of this ledger to the Internal Revenue Service this morning, I said. Along with a Form 1099 MISC, I reported $140,000 of income paid to Greg and Rachel Miller. Greg's face went white. You called the IRS? He whispered. I did, I said. And since you have not paid taxes on this money, and since you likely have not filed returns for your failed startups, I leaned forward. You now owe the federal government taxes on $140,000, plus penalties, plus interest, immediately. Greg did the math in his head. He looked like he was going to be sick. That is $50,000, he stammered. We do not have $50,000. I know, I said. The IRS is not very forgiving, Greg. They garnish wages, they seize assets, they take cars. I looked out the window at the silver BMW. Like that one, I said. Rachel started to cry. Mom, how could you? You are ruining us. You are sending the government after us? You stole from me, I said. I am just correcting the paperwork. You have to retract it, Greg yelled. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them it was a gift. I cannot lie to the federal government, Greg, I said. That would be a crime. I am a law-abiding citizen. Greg stood up. He grabbed the binder. He looked like he was going to throw it. You crazy old bat, he snarled. I will make you pay for this. I will take Noah, and I will disappear. You will never see him again. I do not think so, I said. I looked at the kitchen clock. You see, I said, I did not just call the IRS. I pointed to the window. Greg and Rachel turned to look. A police cruiser was pulling silently up to the curb. Then another one. What did you do? Rachel whispered. The charge for the spa, I said. The $12,000. You tried to run that charge yesterday. So? Greg asked. I verbally told you last week to stop using the card. I lied. Well, it was a half-truth. I had told them to cut back. But in my police report, I was very clear. Any use of the card after a verbal revocation of authority is considered credit card fraud. That is a lie, Greg shouted. You never said that. It is my word against yours, I said. And the amount, $12,000? That is a felony, Greg. In the state of Arizona, credit card fraud over $1,000 is a Class 4 felony. The doorbell rang. Greg looked at the door. He looked at the back door. He looked at me. You called the cops? He choked out. I called them from the driveway, I said. When I saw your car, I told them there were intruders in my house who had stolen my credit card. We are your family, Rachel screamed. You are thieves, I said. The police did not wait for an answer. The door was unlocked. Police! A voice shouted from the foyer. Is anyone home? In the kitchen, I called out. 2 officers walked in. They saw an elderly woman sitting calmly at a table, and 2 young people standing over her, one holding a heavy binder in a threatening manner. Step away from her, the officer ordered, his hand on his holster. Greg dropped the binder. Officer, this is a mistake. She is my mother-in-law. We are just talking. Are you Gregory Miller? The officer asked. Yes, but, and Rachel Miller? Yes, Rachel sobbed. We have a warrant for your arrest, the officer said. Credit card fraud. Identity theft. And elder abuse. Elder abuse? Greg yelled. I never touched her. Financial abuse is elder abuse, son, the officer said. Turn around. Hands behind your back. They handcuffed them right there in my kitchen. The metal clicked. Rachel was wailing. Mom, stop them, please. I do not want to go to jail. What about Noah? I stood up. I walked over to the officer. Where is my grandson? I asked Rachel. He is at the sitters, Rachel cried. Mrs. Gable, down the street. I will go get him, I said. I looked at the officer. Officer, I am the grandmother. I will take emergency custody of the child until this is sorted out. We will need to call Child Protective Services to formalize it, ma'am, the officer said. But given the circumstances, I am sure they will release him to you. They led Greg and Rachel out. The neighbors were watching from their lawns. I saw Mrs. Peterson from next door peering through her blinds. Greg tried to shout something at me as they shoved him into the back of the cruiser, but the door slammed on his words. I stood in the driveway. I watched them drive away. The house was quiet. The heat was still rising off the pavement, shimmering in the air. I walked to my car. I got in. I drove down the street to the sitter's house. I picked up Noah. He was playing with Legos. He looked up when I walked in. Grandma! He yelled. Where are Mommy and Daddy? They had to go away for a little while, sweetie, I said, hugging him. They have some grown-up business to handle. Are they coming back? Not for a long time, I said. Can I stay with you? He asked. You have the good ice cream. Yes, I said. You can stay with me. I took his hand. We walked out to the car. I took him to get ice cream. We sat in the air conditioning, eating chocolate sundaes. I looked at my phone. I had a notification from the bank. New card issued. Shipped. I smiled. I was down $140,000. But I had my house. I had my grandson. And I had my peace. And that, I decided, was a balance sheet I could live with. The air in the kitchen was heavy, thick with the scent of my daughter's expensive perfume and the acrid smell of Greg's anger. It felt less like a family home and more like a courtroom where the verdict had already been decided, but the defendants were too stupid to realize they had lost. I walked past them to the refrigerator. I opened the door. The light inside hummed, illuminating the rows of organic kale juice and sparkling water that I had paid for, but was not allowed to drink. I reached past a bottle of kombucha and grabbed the glass pitcher of filtered water. Are you listening to me? Greg shouted. He was standing by the island, his face a mottled red that clashed with his polo shirt. I said, we were humiliated, Helen. Humiliated. The concierge looked at us like we were criminals. He cut the card right in front of us. Good, I said calmly. That is standard procedure for a compromised account. I poured the water into a glass. I took a sip. It was cool and clean. I needed a clear head for what came next. Compromised? Rachel shrieked. She was sitting at the table, clutching a tissue that was already shredded to pieces. It was not compromised. It was declined. You did this, Mom. You called the bank. I know you did. Why would you do that to us? We are trying to build a life here. You are trying to build a fantasy, I said. And you are using my bricks to do it. I walked over to the table. I did not sit next to my daughter. I sat at the head of the table, the spot my husband used to occupy. I placed my glass of water on a coaster. I placed my heavy canvas tote bag on the floor beside me. Fix it, Greg demanded, pointing a finger at me. Call the bank right now. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them to reinstate the card and raise the limit. We have to go back to Sedona. I have a meeting with a venture capitalist at the golf course tomorrow morning. If I miss this, I lose the seed money for the app. There is no venture capitalist, Greg, I said. Just like there was no angel investor in Las Vegas. Just like there was no silent partner in Miami. There is just you, playing pretend at a resort. You do not know anything about business. Greg sneered. You pushed papers for a school district for 40 years. You have a poverty mindset. You hoard pennies while people like me create value. Value, I repeated. Let us talk about value. I reached down into my tote bag. I felt the cool plastic cover of the 3-inch binder I had spent the last 6 months compiling. It weighed 5 pounds. It felt like a weapon. I lifted it onto the table. It landed with a heavy, solid thud that made the salt and pepper shakers jump. Greg frowned. What is that? A scrapbook? It is a ledger, I said. I opened the binder. Inside, organized by month, color-coded by vendor, and cross-referenced with receipts I had downloaded from the digital statements, was the forensic anatomy of their greed. For the last 2 years, I began, my voice steady and professional. I have watched the numbers. I tracked the trends. I categorized the expenditures. You see, Greg, you are right about one thing. I was a payroll administrator. I do not create value. I audit it. I flipped to the first tab, marked in red. Let us review the fiscal year, I said. I do not have time for this, Greg huffed, turning away. Just fix the card. Sit down, Greg, I said. I did not shout. I used the voice I used when a teacher tried to claim overtime they had not worked. It was a voice that brokered no argument. Greg sat. He looked sullen, like a teenager sent to the principal's office. January 3rd. I read, running my finger down the spreadsheet. Apple Store. Scottsdale Fashion Square. $2,400. 1 MacBook Pro. 15-inch. I needed that for coding, Greg said. You do not know how to code, Greg, I said. You hire freelancers on the internet. January 10th. Lululemon. $600. I needed workout clothes, Rachel cried. I was depressed, Mom. Exercise helps my mental health. January 15th, I continued, ignoring her. The Phoenician Resort. Spa package. $800. That was for networking, Greg insisted. I kept reading. I read through February. I read through March. I listed the steakhouses where they tipped 30% on my dime to look generous. I listed the gas stations where they filled the tank of the BMW with premium fuel while I put regular in my 10-year-old sedan. I listed the liquor store runs, the online gambling charges disguised as entertainment services, and the endless Amazon packages that arrived at the door every day. The room grew quiet. The only sound was my voice, reciting the litany of their theft, and the hum of the refrigerator. I read for 20 minutes. I flipped page after page. I saw Rachel shrink in her chair. I saw beads of sweat form on Greg's forehead. Finally, I reached the last page. I pointed to the bottom line, which I had highlighted in yellow. $140,652.12, I said. I looked up. That is the total, I said. That is what you have spent in 24 months. That is my retirement. That is Noah's college fund. That is the safety net I spent 40 years weaving, and you have cut it to ribbons. Greg stared at the number. He licked his lips. He looked nervous, but he still had that gleam of entitlement in his eyes. He thought he could talk his way out of this. He thought he could spin it. Okay, Greg said, letting out a breathy laugh. Wow, it adds up, huh? Inflation is crazy right now. He leaned forward, putting on his salesman face. Look, Helen, he said. I get it. It looks like a lot. But you have to understand the return on investment. This is seed capital. We are building a lifestyle brand. Once we monetize our following, we will pay you back. Double, triple. Just consider this. Consider this a loan. A family loan. A loan, I repeated. Yes, Rachel chimed in, grasping at the lifeline. A loan. We will sign a paper if you want. We will pay you back when the business takes off. Or, Greg added, shrugging, you can just gift it to us. I mean, you are 72, Helen. You cannot take it with you. The government is just going to tax it when you die anyway. Why not give it to your family now? It is the smart thing to do for tax purposes. I closed the binder. The snap of the rings was sharp and final. You are right about the taxes, Greg, I said. The government is very interested in money moving between hands. I reached into the front pocket of the binder. I pulled out a stack of envelopes. They were thick, white business envelopes, already stamped and addressed. You see, I said. I realized something last week. I realized that if I called this a loan, I would never see a penny. You have no income. You have no collateral. You are a bad credit risk. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Greg muttered. And if I called it a gift, I continued, I would be enabling you. I would be saying that it is okay to steal from your mother, as long as you call it love. I held up the first envelope. So, I did not call it a loan, and I did not call it a gift. What did you call it? Rachel asked, her voice trembling. Income, I said. Greg frowned. What? I categorized every single dollar of this $140,000 as income paid to you for services rendered, I said. Consulting fees. Personal assistance. Miscellaneous labor. But we didn't work for you, Greg said. Exactly, I said. But the Internal Revenue Service does not care if you did the work. They only care that you received the money. I slid the envelope across the table toward them. It was addressed to the Department of the Treasury. This morning, I said, before I went to the bank. I stopped at the post office. I mailed a Form 1099 MISC to the IRS. I reported $140,000 of untaxed income paid to Gregory and Rachel Miller. End quote. The blood drained from Greg's face so fast he looked like a sheet of paper. You reported us to the IRS? He whispered. I did, I said. I am a payroll administrator, Greg. I follow the rules. When money changes hands, paperwork must be filed. Do you have any idea what you have done? Greg screamed, jumping up from his chair. We spent that money. We do not have it anymore. If the IRS thinks it is income, they will want taxes on it. Yes, I said calmly. They will, based on the tax bracket for that amount, plus the self-employment tax, since you are entrepreneurs, you will likely owe about 35 to 40%. I did the mental math. You owe the federal government approximately $56,000, I said. Due immediately, plus penalties for failure to file estimated quarterly payments, plus interest. Rachel started to hyperventilate. $50,000? Mom, we do not have $50. They will garnish us. They will ruin us. They will seize your assets, I said. They will put liens on your future earnings. They will take your leased car. I looked out the window at the silver BMW in the driveway. That is a nice car, I noted. It should cover a fraction of the interest. You have to take it back, Greg yelled. He was pacing the kitchen now, pulling at his hair. You have to file a correction. Tell them it was a gift. Tell them you made a mistake. I cannot do that, I said. Lying to the IRS is a federal crime. I am not going to prison for you. You did this on purpose, Greg shouted. He grabbed the binder and threw it across the room. It hit the wall with a crash, spilling papers everywhere. You vindictive old hag. You set us up. I held you accountable, I said. There is a difference. I am going to fix this, Greg snarled. He pulled out his phone. I am going to call my accountant. You do not have an accountant, Greg, I said. You have TurboTax. Shut up, he screamed. Just shut up. You have ruined everything. We were going to be somebody. We were going to make it. You were going to bleed me dry, I said. And then you were going to move on to the next victim. Rachel was sobbing into her hands. Mom, please, there has to be another way. We have Noah. Think of Noah. If we are bankrupt, if the government comes after us, what happens to him? I have thought about Noah, I said. I have thought about him every day while you two were at the spa. I stood up. I walked over to the counter where my purse was sitting. And that brings me to the second matter, I said. What second matter? Greg asked, his eyes wild. What else could you possibly do to us? The charge from yesterday, I said. The $12,000 for the resort. It was declined, Greg shouted. You stopped it. No harm, no foul. Attempted fraud is still fraud, Greg, I said. It is not fraud, he yelled. Rachel is an authorized user. I revoked her authorization last week, I said, verbally. In this kitchen. I told you both. No more charges. Do not use the card. Use your own money. You said we needed to cut back, Rachel cried. You didn't say stop completely. I said, do not use my card again. I corrected. I remember the words perfectly. And when you tried to run a $12,000 charge after I explicitly forbade it, that is unauthorized use of a credit device. It is a misunderstanding, Greg said. It is a civil matter. The cops won't care about a family dispute. I looked at the clock on the microwave. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I think they will care, I said. Why? Greg asked. Because the amount was over $2,000, I said. In the state of Arizona, credit card fraud involving an amount over $1,000 is a Class 4 felony, punishable by up to 3.75 years in prison. Prison? Rachel whispered. And, I added, because I called them. Greg froze. You called who? The Scottsdale Police Department, I said. I called them from the driveway. Before I came inside, I told them there were intruders in my home who had stolen my financial information and committed identity theft. Greg looked at the front door. He looked at the back door. He looked at me with a hatred so pure it made my skin prickle. "You called the cops on your own daughter?" he hissed. "I called the cops on a thief," I said. At that moment, the blue lights flashed through the front window, bouncing off the white walls of the kitchen. We did not hear the siren. They had come silently. Greg ran to the window. He peeked through the blinds. "Two cruisers," he said, his voice trembling. "They are in the driveway." "Mom!" Rachel screamed, grabbing my arm. "Send them away. Tell them it was a mistake. Please. I cannot go to jail. I am a mother." "Then start acting like one," I said, pulling my arm away. The doorbell rang. Ding dong. It was a cheerful sound. It sounded like a delivery. It sounded like justice. "Open it," I said to Greg. "No," he said, backing away. "I am not opening it. They can't come in without a warrant. I am the homeowner," I said, "and I give them permission." I walked to the door. Greg tried to block me, but he stopped when I gave him a look that dared him to touch me. He knew that if he touched me, it would be assault on an elderly person. Another felony. I opened the door. Two officers stood there. They were young, fit, and serious. They wore sunglasses and utility belts that creaked when they moved. "Mrs. Foster?" the lead officer asked. "Yes," I said. "Thank you for coming so quickly." "Is everyone okay?" he asked, looking past me into the kitchen where Greg and Rachel were huddled together like cornered rats. "Physically, yes," I said. "But these are the people I told you about." I stepped aside. The officers walked in. The heat from outside followed them, mixing with the chill of the air conditioning. "Sir, ma'am," the officer said to Greg and Rachel, "I need you to step outside." "We live here," Greg shouted. "She is lying. She is senile." "She gave us the card. We have a report of unauthorized use exceeding $10,000, the officer said, and a sworn affidavit from the account holder stating that access was revoked. "It is a family matter," Rachel cried. "It is a felony matter," the officer corrected. "Step outside. Now," they argued. They screamed. Greg tried to pull the "Do you know who I am" card, which never works well when you are unemployed and wearing cargo shorts. Rachel tried the tears. But the officers were professionals. They had seen this before. They separated them. They put Greg in cuffs first. "You are making a mistake," Greg yelled as they marched him out. "She is vindictive. She is trying to ruin me." Then they took Rachel. She looked at me as they led her past. Her eyes were full of fear and confusion, like a child who has just realized the stove is hot. "Mom?" she whispered. "Help me." "I am helping you, Rachel," I said softly. "I am stopping you." They put them in the back of the cruisers. The neighbors were out on their lawns now. Mrs. Higgins from across the street was watching over her hedge. The mailman had stopped his truck. I stood in the doorway and watched them drive away. The house was quiet. The binder was still on the floor, papers scattered like fallen leaves. The glass of water was still on the table. I walked back into the kitchen. I picked up the binder. I began to organize the pages. I put them back in order. I had one more stop to make. I picked up my keys. I walked out to my car. I drove to the elementary school 3 blocks away. I walked into the front office. The secretary knew me. "Hi, Helen," she said. "Picking up Noah early?" "Yes," I said. "There has been a family emergency. His parents will be unavailable for a while." She looked at my face. She saw the steel in my eyes. She didn't ask questions. "I will get him," she said. 5 minutes later, Noah walked out. He was wearing his backpack, one strap hanging loose. He looked small. He looked worried. "Grandma?" he asked. "Where is Mom?" "Mom and Dad had to go away for a bit, Noah," I said, kneeling down to hug him. "They have some grown-up timeouts to do." "Did they get in trouble?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "They broke some rules." "Are they coming back?" "Not tonight," I said. "Tonight. You are coming to stay with me." "At the big house?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "At the big house. Can we have ice cream?" I smiled. It was the first real smile I had felt in 2 years. "Yes, Noah," I said. "We can have all the ice cream you want." I took his hand. We walked out into the Arizona sun. It was hot, but it felt different now. It didn't feel oppressive. It felt like a cleansing fire. I had lost my daughter to greed. I had lost my savings to theft. But I had saved the boy. And I had balanced the ledger. The first night with Noah was quiet. It was the kind of silence that usually follows a thunderstorm, where the air feels heavy and electrically charged. But the danger has passed. We sat in the living room of the stucco house. The television was off. The air conditioner hummed its steady, expensive rhythm. But for the first time in 2 years, I did not resent the cost. I was paying for comfort, not for a lie. Noah sat on the floor, building a castle out of Legos he had brought from the sitter's house. He was 8 years old, but in the soft light of the lamp, he looked younger. He looked like a boy who was waiting for a door to open that was going to stay closed for a very long time. "Grandma?" he asked, snapping a blue brick onto a red one. "Yes, Noah? Did Mommy and Daddy do something bad?" I sat in my armchair, the ledger binder resting on my lap like a shield. I thought about how to answer him. I could lie. I could tell him they were on a trip. I could tell him it was a mistake. But lies were the currency Greg and Rachel traded in, and I refused to use their money. "They broke the rules, Noah," I said gently. "Big rules. And when you break big rules, you have to go to a timeout. A long one. Like when I drew on the wall?" he asked. "A little like that," I said. "But much more serious. They took things that did not belong to them." "Oh," he said. He thought about this for a moment. "Are they going to give them back?" I looked at the binder. I looked at the negative space in my bank account where $140,000 used to be. "No," I said. "They cannot give them back. So they have to pay in a different way." He nodded, accepting this logic with the adaptability of a child who has lived in chaos. He put a flag on top of his Lego castle. "I like it here," he said. "It is quiet. Daddy yells a lot at the other house. There will be no yelling here, I promised." I put him to bed in the guest room, the room Greg and Rachel had occupied just that morning. I had stripped the sheets and remade the bed with crisp, clean linens that smelled of lavender detergent, not sandalwood and stale wine. I had packed their clothes into garbage bags and put them in the garage. I did not want Noah looking at his mother's dresses or his father's suits. I read him a story. He fell asleep before I finished the second page. I walked back into the kitchen. I sat at the table where I had delivered the verdict hours earlier. The glass of water was still there. My phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize. A collect call from the Maricopa County Jail. I stared at the screen. Part of me, the mother part, wanted to answer. Wanted to hear Rachel's voice. Wanted to fix it. But the payroll administrator part of me knew better. You do not negotiate with embezzlers. You prosecute them. I pressed decline. I did not sleep well that night. But for the first time in 2 years, it was not because I was worried about money. It was because I was grieving. I was grieving the daughter I thought I had raised, and accepting the stranger she had become. The next week was a lesson in forensic dismantling. I treated the removal of Greg and Rachel from my life like a complex audit. Systematic, ruthless, documented. First, the car. I called the leasing company for the BMW. I told them I was ceasing payments immediately. "The vehicle is in the driveway," I told the agent. "The keys are in the glove box. Come and get it." They came 2 hours later with a tow truck. I watched from the window as they hooked up the silver SUV, the symbol of Greg's status, and dragged it away. It left an oil stain on the driveway, just like Greg had left a stain on my finances. Next, the house. I hired a cleaning crew. I told them to scrub the guest suite until it smelled like nothing. I donated their clothes to a charity shop on the other side of town. I did not want to see a neighbor wearing Rachel's blouse. I sold Greg's electronics, the gaming consoles, the drones he never flew, the podcast equipment he used once, to a pawn shop. I got $2,000 for all of it. I put that money directly into a new savings account for Noah. And then, the legal system took over. I attended the arraignment hearing on Friday. I sat in the back row, wearing my best navy suit. I wanted the judge to see me. I wanted Greg and Rachel to see me. They were led into the courtroom in orange jumpsuits. Rachel looked small and gray without her makeup. Greg looked angry. He scanned the room until he found me. His eyes narrowed. He mouthed something that looked like a curse. I did not flinch. I adjusted my glasses. The prosecutor read the charges: identity theft, credit card fraud, elder abuse, tax evasion. The judge set bail at $50,000 each. They did not have $50. They were remanded to custody. As the bailiff led them away, Rachel looked back. She saw me. Her face crumbled. She mouthed one word: "Mom." I looked at her. I gave her a small, sad nod. I was still her mother. but I was also the witness for the prosecution. I left the courthouse and walked to the family court building next door. I had an appointment with a caseworker. I filed for emergency guardianship of Noah. I presented the police report. I presented the affidavit from the arresting officer. I presented my bank statements showing that I was the sole provider for the family. The judge granted it immediately. "You are doing a good thing, Mrs. Foster," the judge said, signing the order. "That boy needs stability." "He has it now," I said. 6 months later, winter in Scottsdale is the reason people live here. The heat breaks, the air turns crisp and dry, and the desert sky becomes a brilliant, impossible blue. I sat on my back patio, drinking a cup of coffee. It was December. The cactus garden was decorated with white lights. Inside the house, Noah was practicing the piano. I had used the money I saved from not paying Greg's lease to buy a used upright piano. Noah had a natural ear. He was playing Jingle Bells, stumbling a little on the chorus, but keeping the rhythm. It was a beautiful sound. I picked up the mail from the table. There was a letter from the Department of Justice. I opened it. It was a notification of plea agreements. Greg had pleaded guilty to credit card fraud and tax evasion. He was sentenced to 4 years in state prison. He would also be required to pay restitution, though I knew I would never see a dime. The IRS had already seized his future earnings for the next decade. Rachel had pleaded guilty to identity theft because she had no priors and agreed to testify against Greg regarding the business expenses. She received 18 months. She would be eligible for parole in a year. I folded the letter. I felt a twinge of sorrow, but it was distant, like a cloud on the horizon. They were where they belonged. They were in a timeout. There was another letter in the pile, an envelope from the credit card company. I opened it. It was my new card, a shiny, blue rectangle with a new number and a new expiration date. I held it in my hand. It felt light. I walked into the kitchen. I opened the drawer where I kept the scissors. I did not cut this one. I put it in my wallet, behind my driver's license. I would use it for groceries. I would use it for gas. I would use it to buy Noah a Christmas present. But I would never, ever add an authorized user again. Noah stopped playing the piano. He ran to the sliding glass door. "Grandma," he called out. "Are you coming in? I want to make cookies." "I am coming, Noah," I said. I stood up. I looked around my quiet, paid-off house. I looked at the clean driveway where the BMW used to be. I had lost a lot of money. I had lost the illusion of a happy family, but I had gained something money could not buy. I walked into the house and slid the glass door shut, locking out the desert chill. "What kind of cookies?" I asked. "Chocolate chip," Noah said, "with extra chips." "That sounds like a good investment," I said. We walked into the kitchen. I took out the flour. Noah took out the sugar. We measured. We mixed. We balanced the ingredients. And for the first time in a long time, the ledger was perfect.